Our scripture for this evening comes from 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 8 through 14. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 8 through 14. There is something that life calls us to do that we don't like doing, and that something is called waiting. Have you ever found yourself just outright frustrated waiting on something? Waiting on the bus, or maybe you're in the car waiting on the train to pass, waiting on the mail to come, waiting on the weather to change, waiting on an application to be approved, waiting to hear back from a job interview. On and on the list goes. Nonetheless, waiting aggravates us because we want what we want when we want it. Say that again. We want what we want when we want it. Someone who could relate to this frustration with waiting is Saul. And we're going to look at 1 Samuel 13, verses 8 through 14, and understand some things about why we need to wait even when we don't want to wait. Because the failure to wait at the appropriate time can cause us to make irreversible decisions. And those irreversible decisions can sometimes be irreparable decisions. Allow me to read this to you from the Life Application Study Bible, which is the New American Standard. But I wanted to read it from this version just for simplicity's sake and to share some thoughts with you. 1 Samuel 13, verse 8. Now he waited 7 days according to the appointed time set by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, Bring to me the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and to greet him. But Samuel said, What have you done? And Saul said, Because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the appointed days, and the Philistines were assembling at Michmash. Therefore I said, Now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not asked the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. Samuel said to Saul, You have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not endure. The Lord had sought out for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. Saul's problem here is that Saul did not wait on the Lord, and Saul did not obey God because of his impulse. Things weren't happening when he thought they should happen, and so he acted foolishly and recklessly. Let's look at some things to understand how we can better appreciate the need of waiting on God. Because there are times in our lives that we need to make decisions. The question is, have you heard from the Lord? There are times you need direction. There are times of uncertainty. Have you heard from the Lord? 3 problems we see in Saul. Number 1, he says, I saw. This is in verse 11. So he's looking at the fear of his men and not faith in his God. He's looking from a human standpoint and not through spiritual lenses. Then he says in verse 12, well, I thought this is what I should do. In other words, he is using human reasoning to explain away his bad decisions. He says, I feel like this is what I should have done. He's acting impulsively. Beloved, when we do not wait on the Lord and heed his guidance and instructions, the consequences again can be irreversible, irreparable. Most decisions that we make are not urgent and do not require a right now answer. We should not procrastinate for the sake of procrastination, but we should not avoid taking time to seek God's guidance in the direction of our lives. Disobedience has consequences. In addition, when we are impatient with God and impulsive, we make devastating choices. Our actions can affect others. Did you notice that not only did Saul lose any sense of favor that he may have had, but Samuel told him that his kingdom should not endure. In other words, his offspring and anyone under his dominion lost any thoughts, any rights, any access to an enduring kingdom because of Saul's choice. Saul did something that we often do in our weak moments, is that he sacrificed favor by satisfying the flesh. He sacrificed favor with God by satisfying the flesh. Some would ask, well, what was the problem specifically in what Saul did? There are at least two sins that we can identify. Back in 1 Samuel chapter 10 and verse number 8, Samuel told Saul to wait for him. This was an instruction not only from Samuel, but was directly from God. And he told him to wait for him, and after 7 days he'll be there. Of course, we read in the verse number 8, that 7 days had gone, and Samuel did not show up. So one would reason from a human standpoint that Saul was within his rights to proceed, because Samuel told him to wait 7 days. Have you ever thought that the reason why Samuel did not show up within the 7 days is because this was a test from the Lord to see how he would act, if he would keep waiting? Would he get impatient? Would he get impulsive? Would he become fleshly? Or would he remain faithful? The second problem that we see that is identifying his sin is in verse number 10. In that, or verse 9 and 10, I should say, we see there where he makes the burnt offering. This is a clear violation of the law given in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 5 through 14. He was supposed to have waited for a priest to give the offering, and this was something that he took upon himself to do. The prohibition was not only for Saul not to give the offering, as he was not the priest, but you were not supposed to do it just anywhere at any time. There were specific instructions. So he disobeyed God's design for giving the burnt offering. He acted impatiently and impulsively, and because he did not wait, he lost any sense of favor with God. Allow me to give this encouragement and admonition to all who are listening. If you need to make a decision, if you need to seek guidance, seek God, and don't be in a hurry when you don't need to be in a hurry. Base your decisions on what you know are rooted in biblical principles. Base your decisions on faith and not the flesh. And seek to satisfy God and not to satisfy yourself. And you can have the favor of God when you wait on God. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.